Okay. We're live. Hello, Miss Tavis. It's so amazing to be here with you. Well, I wish I was with you, but at least be together online here. So you've given me control over this one today, my dear. Oh my goodness. Yeah, so we're here for a game changer chat with the fabulous Tevis Rose Trower. And I know she's got a book. I've got your book here too. And we're going to talk about it. We are going to talk about this important book and how much it's already changed my life. And I know it will change other people's lives. But, you've used these chats, right, to talk to lots of different people from, mentors and gurus to detectives, NYPD detectives, to bad as F, right, lesbians who've started their own business. And now I'm going to talk to you because I want to know about, I know a lot of people want to know about the game change that's happened in your life. So we're going to explore that together, my dear. And Tevis doesn't know what I'm going to ask her. So this is not, although many of you know, we know each other very well, she does not know what I'm going to ask her. And so so it's not to stump you or anything like that, but just to, I want to learn more about you. And it's just us chicas here today. So so what's the technical stuff I need to
do? The technical judge is if you want to ask a question real time, put it on Facebook, and if I don't respond, it means there's a glitch, because sometimes there's a glitch in the Facebook connection to the live stream. We will definitely answer them afterwards, but if you want it answered real time during the feed, go into LinkedIn. And I'm sorry, I know that's like, why don't they all talk to each other? And we know they don't talk to each other. It's just part of the reality that we live with. But I would love to answer anyone's questions because I'm over the secrets.
Me too. Me too. Great. I know you, Tevis, for 6 years now, I think it is. And it's funny when you and we originally met in Montauk, I think at the Montaukett. Great place for a sunset, everybody. And so, but whenever I was talking about getting into the space about human beings and culture or well-being, everybody said to me, whether it was in Montauk or elsewhere, you've got to meet Tevis. Got to meet Tevis. And when I did meet you more formally, I realized why. You are an amazing woman. We're going to talk about all the different like real jobs, but also, the spirit that you bring to everything that you do. And I'm just thrilled that you invited me to be here. So you ready to dive in?
Yeah.
Okay. So you always start these conversations by asking people one question. And that question is, as a child, as a young person, what was your favorite thing to do? So I'm going to turn the tables on you. What was your favorite thing to do as a child?
It's so funny. Of course, I knew that you were going to ask me that because that's what I always ask people. And the reason I asked them that is the best way for us to get out of like that conditioned face place is to go back to something super primal and innocent. And so I'm going to answer this because I did not know my own answer until I knew that you were going to ask it. Like, but I literally had to ask myself, what do I remember doing? And I had two best friends as a little one, and I'm talking a 5-year-old or so. And we all went to Montessori school together because my dad was a Montessori teacher. And the one thing I remember us doing was what our parents came to call going berserk. And we would literally, like, we'd be playing or whatever, and we would decide that it was just time to go crazy and scream and run through the house and wiggle our little 5-year-old bodies around, like screaming at the top of our lungs. And we would laugh and just laugh and laugh. And we started to call it, like it became our trigger because we heard the adults call it, oh, they're going berserk, right? We started to say, is it time to go berserk? And we would
Well, it's funny because I was going to ask you, how did the adults respond when you guys decided to do that? Was it like, oh no, they're going berserk? It was like, yay!
They were like 70s parents, and they were all in the Montessori community, so they were trying to be permissive and like precursors to the millennial parenting that we see now. Like they gave us permission, and I'm not saying that my parents were perfect in terms of supporting everything I've ever wanted to do, but in that moment, I think what was so compelling about that was being a little kid, you get all this energy, right? And we get that as adults too, but as a little kid, it's so primal, it's such a surge, and we're so alive to it. I just think it was kind of genius of us as 5-year-olds or 6-year-olds to actually say, we need to run around the house and just
get rid of this energy, go crazy.
Wow, right? And we'll feel better afterwards, and we're going to laugh a lot. Like, I think we could all use a little bit more going berserk.
I wonder if you called those two people today, I don't know if you're still friendly with them or not, and said, let's go berserk.
Oh my God. I should. I'm going to hunt you down, Julie Redonis and Stacey Hughes. I'm hunting you down to see if you remember going berserk, because it was so much fun.
Julie and Stacey.
Yes.
I'm waiting to hear that answer.
You're on my list. You are on my list.
Well, Tevis, I've heard you say a lot that as an adult, right, one of your favorite things to do is to take on things that scare you.
Oh,
so,
a bad habit.
Well, I don't know, right? Does that help you grow? Right? So I'm curious as to, what scares you?
It's so interesting because, and this is not a plug for the Game Changer, I promise you guys this, but one of the things I continue to realize is that when you have an inspired thought, like a kind of thought, and there's something in me that contracts, right, that says, oh, it's too big, you can't do that, right? That's really the moment where I go, oh, okay, that's my next big move. So,
so you see something that scares you and you get drawn to it instead of recoiling and putting it aside.
Well, I still feel the recoil, but I know that if I want to grow, I have to supersede it, right? I've got to say, wow, why am I backing off of something that obviously excited me enough to retract? And then I have to go towards it. So there have been a number of things in the past couple of years. Well, throughout life, there have been countless things, but I think the things that really come to mind have been things like story slamming, playing the guitar and singing. Really,
you won your story slam, right? Didn't you? 3. That must be confirmation that you're a good storyteller. I know that you are.
Girl with a speech impediment? Are you kidding? For me to win a story slam, I'm like, crazy. Yeah, so crazy validating and fun, and the idea that any of us can share an insight in such a way that lands right with other human beings. I mean, that's our gift to each other, right? Is sharing our experiences. So
yeah, well, and to go out there and put yourself out there, and say, hey, I may fall flat on my face, or I may win 3 story slams.
Well, those thoughts cross my mind a lot. And someone asked me, they said, now that you've done a lot of public speaking, has it gotten easier? Do you still get afraid? And it's funny because I still to this day, you get that adrenal surge, whether it's story slamming or whether it's playing the guitar, or whether it's sharing a song I've written, or speaking my truth on one of these corporate things that you and I do. I still get the adrenal surge, but then I also get that voice in my head that says, if this feels right, then you just got to do it.
Right. Well, you are you're a big teacher of mine, you know, and one of the things that you've really taught me and that I really value in you and it's inspired by is your ability to stay in touch with your heart and to constantly ask your heart what it's feeling, and am I sitting in my truth, right? And so but to try to stay in touch with that, what do you ask yourself? How do you, what is that process like for you to stay in touch with what your heart is telling you to do?
It's such a good question, because the other thing I want to say, that you've been a great inspiration and teacher to me as well. Really. I really start with the felt sense, right? Like, I know that my brain can rationalize or talk me in or out of anything. And I know that creativity is actually not a cognitive function, it's precognitive. So the instrument of access to what is precognitive is your body. So when I feel a strong contraction, right? When I feel I'm getting tense, or I'm getting nervous, or I'm afraid to say something, that's when I know I'm actually striking on something that I need to pursue. So in terms of going to my heart's truth, it's really become a practice of watching how I respond in the moment. Because if I feel that trigger, then I know I need to turn to my heart, that I got to drop out of here and into there to know what to do next.
Right. And when you feel that trigger in your body, right, is there a practice that you go to or a question that you ask yourself to sort of take the pulse of where to go make that decision?
Well, it's so funny. I was kind of thinking about this today, right? They say there's always two edges to a blade, right? So if we think of a blade as being a wall, a problem, then if it only has one side, it is a wall. If it has two sides, it's a blade that we can cut through. And I was thinking about that as a metaphor, because when you feel that wall inside of yourself, that's kind of like a stop, right? You can't go on. If you can get on the other side, well, what if I do? Or what am I afraid of, right? Then you actually do create a blade out of what was a wall. And for me, I do have an anchor question, and my anchor question is, what is my greatest good in this moment? What is the greatest good that I can align with in this moment? And that's what I turn to over and over and over again. I gotta tell you, I don't always rise to it. Every time I do, it does.
You're not a saint.
No, I've got them all around me.
I know.
You know that, right? But yeah, I feel a lot.
Right? Progress, not perfection.
Yeah, progress, not perfection.
Well, I love that. I love the idea, and for all of you listening here, I love the idea of coming up with a question, right, that helps you at that moment, at that crossroads. It's a little bit, we'll get into Game Changers later, but it's a little bit about what Game Changers is about. You know, how can you rise to the occasion or understand that this isn't the path you want to go on? And I love that question, Tevis, that you ask yourself. That serves you well, it sounds like.
Yeah.
Well, one thing I want to talk, I mean, you have a really interesting, varied background, right? And you're like this gorgeous Cheshire cat, you know, you've had a number of lives. You probably have
more to come. Hopefully more to come.
Many more to come, right? And And you mentioned before you're very open about having had a speech impediment, during childhood, and I'm curious because a lot of people have difficulty turning inward. I'm one of those people. I'm a doer. I want to get things done, but I don't want to think about necessarily like what's going on inside all the time. And it's a practice, and so I wonder, you're so adept at turning inward, and I wonder, do you think that having a speech impediment at a young age, sort of was an impetus to have you turn inward a little bit more?
Totally. It's kind of funny because having had a bunch of people on the Game Changer chats, but also having met and learned from a lot of people, part of what I've come to appreciate is all of us have something that we feel like makes us less or different. Every one of us. Every one of us has something that makes us feel like we have to pretend. And when you have a speech impediment, or you have, say, with Abby Sugar, right? She came on the Game Changers chat, and she has no body hair, right? I think that when something about you that is different is so visible to others, you get a deep learning. One, it teaches you compassion, right? Because you understand that what makes people be cruel or unkind is their own fear, right? So you get that, right? And then you go, oh. And even as a 4 or 5-year-old, I remember watching kids be mean to me. Or when I got into to public school, because in Montessori school, the teachers would not allow the other kids to be mean to you. And it wasn't part of the culture. But when I got into public school in 6th and 7th grade, kids were horrible to me.
Because of the speech impediment?
Yeah, really, really mean to me. And part of what I learned through that experience was I learned what fear feels like in your body and what it triggers. And for me, it was a physical response that my throat would seize up and I couldn't find a word, right? But if you play that out, all of us have a fear response. And whether it's a speech impediment or whether it impacts a compensatory action, right, that keeps us safe, etc., or a leadership misstep or a relational misstep because we're trying to deal with our fear as opposed to dealing with the situation that happened with the person that we're talking to. All of that played out in my mind really throughout my young years and my teens. And it was interesting because I got into grad school, right? And I could kind of compensate for it and hide it throughout undergrad because as long as I felt safe, I could speak. But when I got into grad school, I went to business school, and all of a sudden I had to present. And it was,
Yeah.
and I was with all these business school people, and it was competitive, and people were all like, well, I was on Wall Street, and right, there was all this stuff happening. And here I was, a history grad, right, in business school, and so I did a couple things. I went to the psych people in the student health center, and I did self-hypnosis. It did nothing. I'll tell you what really did it for me.
What?
Is some psych person at the student like wellness place said, I'm going to give you beta blockers. I was like, what's beta blocker? And he goes, beta is the short name for the chemical that is the panic response. And your body is still going to release it. This blocks it from the receptor that responds to it. And I said, oh, okay. And he goes, don't worry about it. Musician, professional symphonic performers, they use it, actors use it, etc. And I said, oh, okay. And what was interesting was I used it once in a student presentation. And it was so funny because I could feel the adrenaline, but it didn't hit me. And it was kind of like being on drugs. And I said what I had to say, and I felt really groovy. And then I got down to
The experience, kind of, huh? Yeah.
I was like, it's kind of like being on a drug. Well, obviously it's actually a drug, but it felt like a drug. So then I get down to Brazil, and I'm working in strategic planning for GM. And Brazil's a hot mess, and GM was a hot mess at the time. We don't have time for that, but I had to present to the board, and I was so glad I had these pills from the student health center. And I had to present twice, once to the board and once to the like marketing folks in Sao Paulo. And the first time I had to present, I took them. I took like half of one, and I got through it and everything. And then something clicked in me, and it really pissed me off. I was like, you know what? If I can do this with those pills, and I'm not saying this is true in everything in life, this is not like throw away your pills kind of thing. I'm just saying this was my experience.
Mm-hmm.
It pissed me off so much. I remember throwing them in the back of my closet the day prior to the second presentation, and I refused to use them. And I remember feeling the same adrenal surge and saying, I'm not going to let this panic me.
And that was it. You were able to control it?
I mean, what's interesting is having a speech impediment has actually become one of my best friends. And I'm just being honest, because anytime I don't feel safe around someone, if you ever hear me stutter, it's going to be because I'm second guessing what I'm saying. I don't feel safe with who I'm talking to. Like, it's literally become my own internal red flag that I am not good with me in that moment. And so I've come to really sit with it. And sometimes it just happens the way it does for any of us, because I'm thinking so fast and I'm trying to get words out, etc. But that's kind of normal, because we all do that. But I know in those other moments, like if I stutter a lot with someone who's in my social circle, I know that my God is trying to tell me something about the relationship.
Isn't that interesting? It literally stops you, right? For a nanosecond, in a way that it's almost a gift, like you're saying. It's the best.
Oh my God.
And I didn't know that it was something that transcended beyond your childhood into your career, because you're such you're a speaker, you're an orator, you come to things with great confidence, and so it's big, really. It's amazing.
It's so funny how whatever you come into life with, you just carry it with you.
Well, it's also a lesson. I mean, I want to have conversations throughout this entire time with you. It's a lesson. It's a lesson of the power of your mind. Like you said, it's not going to work for everything.
No.
But that worked for you, and maybe curiosity and experimenting, right?
Well, but I think that you set a really great platform for how has this worked, and it forced me to ask myself, what is going on inside of me that is giving me this outcome, right? And like, beyond being able to get a sentence out or being able to take a microphone, I mean, you love. Wait. You know, I love a microphone, right? I'm like
the spotlight just a little bit.
Like above and beyond the joy and freedom of that, right? I think my deepest gratitude is that it taught me the discipline to watch how I'm responding in the moment, and to not try to push it away, ignore it, disregard it, do all the things that I think a lot of us do, but to actually say, what's really going on inside there?
Well, also not to be embarrassed by it, not to let it define you. Yeah,
that would suck. And the reason I'm laughing, I think of all of my other flaws. Right? I mean, think about it. If any given attribute of our personality defined our whole,
yeah. Well, and we tend to focus on those things, right? Instead of the 1,000 things that one does well, the thing that you mess up on is the thing that you tend to totally, get stuck on.
Yeah, obsession. Yeah, I call it the habit of discontent. Whether it's with our life around us or ourselves, right? We have this habit of just dwelling,
Yeah.
dwelling and dwelling. And yeah.
I love that habit of discontent. So I want to also talk about one thing that really surprised me about you, and we've never really talked about, is your military service, right? And so, because I don't think of you as someone who takes orders.
Oh yeah, that was my most formative experience too. It's so crazy.
Was it? So tell me about it, because I'm like, what made you sign up for that experience, and what did you learn from that?
Money.
Money.
I was a middle class girl. My parents did not have money. My mom worked as a respiratory therapist. My dad was a Montessori teacher. No one had money, and I went to college, and I knew I was going to end up in grad school, and I was facing student loan debt, and Be All You Can Be was all over the media, and it was an ethical conundrum for me, because as I picked up my hand and swore to follow the orders of the commander in chief of the United States, it was not a person whose judgment I especially aligned with, but I did it anyway, and that's a whole other conversation. I will say that it turned out, as many of the things that are the most left field in any of our lives are, it ended up being the biggest lesson in leadership I have ever had, in team building. And I know it's like, oh, we teach you how to be a leader, blah, blah, blah. No, it was being in this pile of 120, 18, 19-year-olds from all over the country, some of whom were from military families, and they were there just because their identity was really tied up, and I've got to be a military person or I won't be as great as my father, my whoever, right? And then there's me, this hippie free kid,
Let's go. Let's save the world.
vegetarian household, the whole bit, growing up. And I cried the night before I went to basic training. I sobbed. I thought I was going to jail. And I flipped that switch in my head, and I was like, oh, Tevis, just treat it like that camp. I know. You hear that, and you're like, really? You treat it? And I thought, I've made a commitment. I need to make the most of it. I'm just going to treat this. I'm just going to dive in. I'm going to enjoy it, etc. And part of what I found when I got there was, I love the plurality of humanity. I love how different all of us are. And there were kids from Puerto Rico, and there were kids from here and there, and all over, and some were brainiacs and some weren't so smart. But we were all in it together. And I really found that the organizing principle of getting something done, right, is really clear in a lot of organizations. In the Army, that's true. Even in basic training, there's always a clear call to what do we have to get done today, right? But what makes it a livelihood is the spirit that you bring to it. And part of what I found, right, is when they would rotate all of us in and out of these leadership positions, right? And we had gone all summer, and I'd been every low leadership position. They had me on latrine duty, this and that.
Brush and the whole thing.
Oh, name it. I was donkey poo basically. But at the end of the summer, I think I was cleaning my boots or something, and someone said, "You're first sergeant." First sergeant is like the person who has to get everything done, right? Like first sergeant, it's not the commander, but it's like kind of like the COO, right?
Well, of course you were, Tevis. Of course you were the first sergeant.
Right, you have to put everyone there in place on time, you know, blah blah blah. And I'm like Sergeant Benjamin, and I'm putting on my little hat and I've got my bonnet on and everything. And I was late for formation because I didn't know I was first sergeant. I'm like running out there. And it was so funny because one of the platoons was late. And that makes you look bad as first sergeant because you haven't gone there on time. And I had just come in to formation. And I was like, what am I going to do? And I literally said, company about face. And everyone turned around.
I got the power.
Like, company about face. And they go, and I was like, ooh, I like this. And I said, repeat. And I said, whatever platoon, E platoon, whatever, right? We're waiting.
Oh, you shamed them.
90 kids my age had to repeat after me. You know, platoon or squad, I forget. We're waiting, echoing across Fort Knox. You should have seen these kids show up. It was so great. We had such a great, it was a laugh. It was yeah, I shamed them, but actually, it was a we, right? It was a we, and it was great.
You're like, listen, I'm in charge now. You guys are late. I got to figure this out. Let's band together and get them over here.
And we had a great laugh. And I remember, I will never forget. So we weren't allowed to go to the canteen until the end of the summer. But I remember going to the canteen, and I think the song that summer was "This Is How We Do It, Baby." And I remember, like everybody, the lifers, the people who are just doing it for the money, the hippie, like everybody just having this beautiful time together. And it taught me so much about, at the end of the day, we all just want to do a good job.
Well, I was thinking when you were saying that too, it's somewhat similar to the work that we do with organizations right now about helping them create a human culture at work in terms of, you know, is it clear what you need to do? Is there camaraderie? You know, are you working together? You know, all of those things.
Like that damn book, everything you need to know you learned in kindergarten. I mean, yeah. So much of what I think about when I think about how important what we do every day together is. And when I think about how it's a source of pride, it's a source of identity, it's a source of creative output, I think about all that. And then I think about the fact that I think in our hearts, most of us are 5-year-olds. And we just want that conviviality, right? We want to feel playful. We want to feel safe. And we want to feel like we're a part.
Yeah, we have a community. We're together. Yeah, I would agree with that.
It's so simple, right? It's so funny. Like there's all these covers of HBR, you know, saying all these, you know, fancy things, and I'm like, shouldn't I just say, we're all still just playing?
Yeah.
Right.
We're just trying to live our lives. Let's make this happen.
We're playing on a playground.
Right. Nobody push anybody off the merry-go-round.
Push someone off the swing.
Let's go berserk. Well, fast forward a bit, right? So you were in corporate America for a while, and then one day you decided to just quit your job on what turned out to be 9/11, 2001. And so why did you decide to leave corporate America? And Tell us about that.
Yeah. So I'd gotten out of grad school and I ended up in a number of Fortune 500s, but the first one I really landed, well, not the first one, but probably the third one. Well, okay, let's start at the beginning. I went to Coke and then I went to IBM. And so I started to see like all these big brand name companies. And when you really got into them, what was the experience of them?
Mm.
And when I went to IBM, it was dismal. Everyone hated it. People, no one laughed, no one smiled. And this is what taught me never take a job for title or pay. I swear to you, I will hang my hat on these words because I was.
Or if you get into an elevator and nobody says hello.
Exactly. Like when you do that, like I thought, oh, but I'm going to be brand manager for the Think Pad for Latin America. I was so seduced by it. It was my ego. And I got a 50% bump in salary. And I was like, oh, I'm so. But the whole time I was there, like to say that the physical environment was great was more than a metaphor. Like the entire environment was great. No one liked each other. Like it was great. It was very great. And so through that, I learned never take anything for title or money. It's your ego talking, and it's not worth the money ever. And so then I bounced into Corn Ferry. I worked in executive search for a while and learned a lot about how important our job title, that thing about, oh, I'm going to take that job for title and money, how it really ties into our identity.
Mm-hmm.
And that really blew me away that I would be talking to whoever ran Accenture for a specific country and how miserable he or she might be in their job, but they were afraid to do anything about it or change how they went about that job just because they were so afraid of rocking the boat. And that was kind of my first exposure to imposter syndrome, that I don't care if you're white or black or what age you are or male or female or whatever. You really got to ask yourself, how many aspects of myself have I given up along the way because I think I have to fit into my role? And I think a lot of us do that. I know I have. I don't now, thank God, but I have.
Well, I think also a lot of people have, and thankfully now we live in a time where there's less hiding that has to be done. You can, I think.
I think so. Okay, by the way, I think you're right. I think that a lot of the conventional wisdom around authenticity at work and be your whole self at work, I think there's a lot of talk about it. I think that just my own exposure to executive think tanks and leadership academies, etc., what I still hear is there's been a hard install of software, right, in the brain at an early age, that is basically the installation of fear that if you're really who you are, that you're never going to get anywhere in the world. But what I actually see is that a lot of leaders, that's how they get somewhere in the world. And so my mission is kind of like, okay, what if we do a little bit less of the pretending and more of the being who you are-ing?
And is that why you left corporate America to start balanced integration?
Oh, you're so good. You know what, actually? Okay, so I was working at Time Warner, right? And they just merged with AOL, and it was like the brand new world of convergence media. And everyone's like, is convergence really going to happen? I think this is a hoax. I don't think it's really going to happen. Like, it was so dumb. It's like, duh, of course it's going to happen, right? Of course, the merger never played out, and they separated eventually. But I was there and I was watching the war, the cultural war of AOL, which was an old boy network founded on old boy ideas that then became the new economy in the .com right? But even old boy AOL butting up against old boy Time Warner was still a cultural war. And I was watching that, and so two things really gave me the wake up call. One is that I would get on the elevator, and if I was on the elevator with a VP, well, I was like a VP, but someone a level above, they wouldn't say hello.
Mhm.
Even if they knew me, they wouldn't really say hello. And I'm a pretty friendly person, right? But if a cleaning person, the cleaning lady from Poland who barely spoke English would always get on, even with her garbage pail, and say, hello, how was your day?
Mhm.
And I thought, what is it as we scale the ladder that humanity becomes so daunting and terrifying? Like what is going on with us? So that really struck me. And then the other thing that struck me was an overall awareness of how all of us wake up every day. We all put our pants on, we brush our teeth, hopefully. We all do what we have to do, but then somehow for us, work and function in society becomes oppositional. Now you look at nature, a tree does not fight being a tree, right? Water does not fight being water. Sugar does not fight being sweet, right?
Mhm.
And I started to ask myself, like, what is it that happens that human beings fight? Falling into an organizing principle of the whole. And that's really what got me very restless. And then one morning I decided to quit my job.
Well, that's kind of just going back into what is your heart saying, you know, and listening to it, you know. So why don't you quit your job?
Well, 20 minutes after I decided to quit my job, and I told my dear boss, who's still a close friend, Bob Sermons, that he had to fire me because I knew they were having layoffs. I was like, oh, Bob, save some guy who's got a bunch of kids or some lady who's got a family, save their job. 2 planes flew into 2 buildings.
Yeah.
And that was my 9/11. And thank God that nothing worse happened for me on that. But okay, so back to your question. What was your question?
Well, just, you know, so then you decided to launch Balance Integration. So was that to address some of that what you were seeing in the workplace and to help alleviate it?
I wanted to. I really, really, really. What I saw was there's a separation of self and work, right? And not only that, but there's a separation of that timeless self, right? That huge self from the small identities that all of us make, right? So there was that, and then there was this: what's my job? And then what's my work in this lifetime? Like, what is really my contribution in this lifetime? And if you think about that as a quadrant, right, those 4 quadrants don't actually talk to each other a whole lot. And so I was getting restless enough. Yeah, I did quit my job that day. And I took about 9 months off because I'm going to say this, but I really believe that when we're making a big change, it behooves us to allow the metabolic action of what we're moving out of, right? The microcosm, the microsystem of what we're moving out of. We really need to give that time to quiet down before we move it into something new, or we're just going to carry those same patterns forward.
Right.
And so I gave myself 9 months. I call it going fallow. And yes, I'm going to write a book on it eventually. But yeah.
Well, for those people who can't take 9 months off work, you can at least adjust your mindset during that time period.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Thank you so much for clearing my. Look, I'm not saying I was blessed because I negotiated a package and everything, but even if that's not present, there are ways for us to shift gears in such a way that we're not as plugged in. So we start to allow ourselves space and time to apprehend in the old sense of the world, to really receive the impressions of the world around us in a different way.
Mm-hmm. Well, and now, and I want to get into the book, but now, you know, you're doing that through your work helping executives, right? And leaders.
I mean, people ask me that all the time. How did you build balance and integration? I'm like, I pray a lot. I do my best. It's so funny, right? Because I think for any of us, we can stand in front of our computer and look at LinkedIn or Facebook, and we see all the amazing posts and everything. And it's interesting because I think there are so many correlations to self-esteem and exposure to social media, but I think what that's really about is our relationship with self when we measure ourselves against others. And what that's really taught me is that to the extent that we can practice what that quote is that's attributed to everyone, be kind, for all you meet are waging a brave battle, right? That I don't care how great your Facebook page is or how great your title is. I've worked with CEOs, I've worked at like venture capitalists, titans, etc. We are all waging the same battle, and it may have different flavors, but my real passion, I think at this point, because at some moment you wake up and you're middle aged. I'm turning 52 in December, the 12th, if anyone wants to like
send you flowers or whatever.
Flowers, I'll take it, right? But I think what it really has turned me towards is that I do believe in the capacity of greatness in all of us. And I do believe that the limitations of our world are defined by the lack of understanding of one's own greatness, and not just in a self-serving way. But what we're seeing play out globally and throughout history is always somehow there's a poverty of the soul. Somehow there's a disconnect from a sense of connection to our own impact. And so having done 18 or 19 years of strategy consulting and culture consulting, etc., I have worked with enough executives to really understand that fundamentally we're all fighting, we're all asking these very same questions, and that is who am I, and how do I bring this fully to bear on what I do every day?
Yeah, that's a good segue into the book. You know, you wrote this book, The Game Changer's Guide to Radical Success, and you know, all the moments that you're talking about are game-changing moments, right? And I know you wrote this book to address what you were just talking about, and you just led a course on it. We went through each chapter. There was a small group of us, and it was eye-opening and life-changing for me. And I just want to read a little bit about some of the key points. Is that it really, you know, it encouraged me to understand my own narrative and inner truth. And so words that were used are things like, you know, live, not just exist, and to see everything as fodder, and listen to your inner voice without judgment.
Oh my God, well, that's the trick. We usually just listen to it and go, oh my God, what do I do next? What do I do next, right?
Right. And to allow yourself to fail again without judgment, and thus, as a result of allowing yourself to fail, know that you will grow and learn. And you know, I love that you ask the question within, you know, what if, you know, and encourage people to wake up to their own calling. and to trust themselves and their soul clock.
Yeah.
About that. So on one part of the book, you talk about getting rid of illusions, you know, and I'm curious, and false convictions, the false convictions that we create. And so maybe you can talk about your personal experience with that. You know, what are some of the you had to separate yourself from some of the illusions that you had to.
You know what's funny? Like what really taught me about that is when I lived in Brazil, right? There's this great expression, "Você me decepcionou," right? You deceived me, right? And something about sitting with that phrase. What's beautiful about learning other languages is you start to really clue into the meta of what's embedded in those words. And when I started to think about how so many models culturally are that life is a trickster, right? And that just when you think you have it all figured out, life's gonna rip out the carpet or rip out the tablecloth, right? And then I thought about that and I was like, well, what really, like, life never made a bargain that it was going to be sunshiny in November, but yet it was today, right? Like, so what we're really talking about is expectations. But this addiction to our expectations, and not only that, but entitlement around our justification, our right to these expectations, right? Is what really is the destabilizing factor. And that made me really curious because I wondered how many times have any of us have had something unexpected happen to us and we just want to take our toys and go home, right? We just want to, we all do it, male, female, I don't care who you are, how old you are, everyone does it, right? Because we have some kind of unspoken contract, set of expectations, set of conditions, like life, I will love you if X, Y, and Z. What? Are you kidding me? So that's where it really
Living your life when with qualifiers, you know, it's like that only if, you know, and the delusions that we set up for ourselves. You use a couple of examples in the book. Like, what did you call, Jeff? Was it like, do you always want to be a fat? What did you call it?
So by the way, I read the book in 2011, and when I read it as it was coming out into print, I was like, oh my God, are people going to hate me for this? Jeff had used that phrase about himself.
Right.
So basically, I was coaching this dude, mid-level executive at a very prestigious organization, around performance, his life. Like, for us to say, well, I'm an executive coach, but I don't life coach, or I'm a life coach and I don't, we're all one human being, right? And Jeff had a happiness problem, productivity problem, a challenge with his weight, right? He had a bunch of things happening, and he went through a game change process. And what oftentimes happens, if we sign up for something, we'll fight it all the way through, or maybe we won't even do it. Like, I've had people drop it, and then after the course is over, they'll call me and go, I'm really sorry, I didn't.
Well, sometimes they don't even realize, like, they don't, it's self-sabotage, right? Oh, I don't have time for that, you know?
Yeah. Well, so with Jeff, he kept saying, no, I can't. No, I can't make this change. No, I can't make this change. I can't make this change. And so we were in his exit coaching session, and he was like, no, I can't. I couldn't. I can't. I couldn't. And I just looked at him and I was like, Jeff, if you fought half as hard to be, because he had told me, he said, I had a dream of myself as who I want to be. And literally, while he was asleep, his happier self showed up for him. I mean,
because he was poking the bear, you know, he was, yeah.
Well, I'm not going to take credit for it. I'm just going to say I think that's pretty cool. When this idea of what you dream of for yourself actually shows up in your dream, I think that's pretty freaking awesome. And so he had told me that, and he went, oh, but I can't. And I just said to him, Jeff, if you fought half as hard for that guy who showed up in your dream as you are fighting against him, what would happen? Right. And it was just lovely. But you also asked me, oh, negative convictions. So uncomfortable. This is the place where like everyone wants to check out and go, I don't really understand what you mean.
Well, I bring it up because it's such a barrier to people living their best life or feeling satisfied.
Being who they are, who they actually are.
Yeah.
And not whatever suit or whatever configuration they think they should be to fit in the world. So one of the practices I've really fallen in love with is not only writing down everything you have faith in, like I really believe that nature calms me, or I really believe in the goodness of other human beings, or I really believe that a good night's sleep is gonna serve me better, right? Just simple statements of faith, right? Or beliefs, right? Because some people, that word faith, it just has too many religious connotations. And but then you have to get into the shadow beliefs.
Mm.
So everyone has a shadow. Everyone has a part of themselves or some kind of expression of beinghood that they've been told is really bad, right? Like it's bad if you're unorganized. It's bad if you don't do everything for everyone else. And everyone has a version of this. And the whole point that I've learned is that none of us are going to do away with our shadow, like all those things about ourselves that we're so afraid of. The point is to understand that we put that part of ourselves in our shadow, to understand it, love it, and then to give ourselves freedom to be who we need to be anyway.
And be kind to it and nurture it.
Just bring that compassion. Yeah.
Right. Because so often, right? I like to say this, I say this a lot in my coaching practice too. It's like, we'd say things to ourselves we never ever would say to somebody else.
Oh yeah.
The mean girl guy comes out.
Dude.
You know?
Yeah. It's funny too. About a month and a half ago, I meditate and I always share the practices that I come up with, but I literally had this awareness as I was meditating because of course I have parts of myself that I'm like, oh, those parts of you are so great. You're awesome. And then I have parts of myself that go, well, but you're really holding the rest of me back, right? Like, oh, if you weren't here, I'd be awesome, right? And so I literally created, maybe it probably exists somewhere else, but I sat and I did a breath practice where I was just practicing breathing and supporting and loving my whole self. Now, this is kind of funny because we're right on the tail end of all that manifestational, oh, just think good thoughts. And if you think about a Ferrari, you're going to get a Ferrari. And a simplification of the power of thinking, but it engendered an allergy to our dark side, right? To our shadow side, the side of us that none of us want to own up to, or to ever having a bad feeling. And so when I sat and I really understood, because when a singer sings, they're not just singing from their hope, they're also singing from their pain, right? When a creator creates something, a painter, a leader, when they're making a decision, they're making a decision from the whole scope of who they are, right? And I think that's really important for all of us to understand is those parts of us that we hold back, no, they're actually a part of our strength.
It's very profound, I think, because I hope that people listening will just take a moment to think about the sides that they're holding back and just consider letting them see a little bit of daylight, see what happens.
It doesn't mean that you give that part of you the keys to the car if you're drunk, right? We're not saying let them call the shots. We're saying embrace that that's a part of your story. That's part of who you are as well. So, yeah.
Well, I could talk to you all night, but I know we've been on for about an hour. So, and we're still in a global pandemic, and it's been really interesting to me to watch you sort of turning to a virtual community to some degree. Like you've started doing yoga online and the CEO roundtables. And oh, by the way, I should say before we go there, you're going to do another course on this, right? In January? Okay. So just look out for that, you guys. Yeah, another 10-week course to be guided by Tevis through the Game Changers program. So I highly recommend that. But shameless plug in there for you. You deserve it. But you've been turning, to a virtual community by doing, roundtables and pop-up yoga and meditation in your garden and C-suite sessions.
I drunk last week. I was like,
I know. I love it. And so when this is over, right, and when we are safe for people to do stuff again, what are you going to do? What's the first thing?
Oh my God, I have two things I want to do, and one's probably not a surprise. Before all this started, I wanted to do a year-long intensive called the Woodstock Sessions, and if you want to Google that, it's all still up online. It's not happening, obviously, because no one's hanging out in person, but I really wanted to give like people who want to up-level their greatness just a deep dose of how do you pivot in such a way that you're calling on the greatness inside of you. And so that I am so looking forward to, because
that'll be really cool.
So excited. But I really just want to have a huge dance party and have all my friends just shake their butts. I'm gonna crank it up. I love to DJ. I love to DJ. I'm gonna throw the dance party of the frickin' century, and I can't wait to just get sweaty and laugh and hug. Oh. And have finger foods, do all those things that none of us are doing.
Well, you have a beautiful property in Woodstock, so that's the perfect place. A little fire pit.
Do it, man. We'll walk my labyrinth. I built a labyrinth anyway. I know we're out.
I love that idea, I think. And so I've been thinking about how to close the session, right? Because we need to have an exclamation point or something, right? And I know that others have done things like chanting or drumming and this and that. And I was thinking, I don't know how many of you know this, but Tevis is a rock and roller. She doesn't know I'm going to do this. She might turn off the live feed right now, or she may just say no, which you can say no. But she's been rocking it out, and she's written a few songs actually. And I just wonder if you would maybe sing us out a little bit, close with maybe a few bars of a song. Is that too much to ask, or is it okay?
I'm trying to think of which song I was singing. Oh my God, this is so embarrassing.
What are the ones you wrote?
I don't actually have time to tune anything that.
See, you can see I did not warn her, so she doesn't have a tune.
No, I had no idea.
Let me just play a tune.
So I just wrote a song, and I'll sing you one of the verses. Is that good? Would you guys be happy with that?
I love it. Oh, we didn't check the feed too to see if there are any questions. Do you?
I know I haven't seen Jack, so either I'm really boring or whatever.
No. You've been amazing. I think you're just giving out such amazing tidbits.
So this is a song I wrote actually 15 years ago. No, actually, I'm going to do a different one. I just wrote this song a couple nights ago. I was outside in the full moon, and I was thinking about that moment when you are with someone. I'm single, and you're with someone and you really see who they are. And so this is a verse. So I saw your shadow in the light of the moon. You gave me your heart, baby, didn't have room. From your glassy eyes, the way you drove your car, you were running from the devil, but you'd never get far. I'm so not warmed up, but anyway, there you have it for posterity.
No, I just love that. I mean, it just also just showing who you are, like addressing fear, you know, singing spontaneously a song you wrote. Is there anything that I didn't ask you that you want to make sure that you talk about before we say goodbye?
Nah. It all comes out eventually. Thank you so much, Marjorie. It's
oh my God, it's been such a joy for me. Thank you for inviting me to do this with you.
It's so funny to be on the receiving end. Anyway, peoples, thank you for being here. I've got two amazing people lined up. One's an executive from LinkedIn. We're just trying to find a date. And one is the creator of conscious capitalism, Raj Sisodia. This guy is awesome. So stay tuned for the dates. I'm just trying to nail them down. And if someone really moves and inspires you and you think that they would be great on this kind of conversation, I'd love to have them. So let me know and have a beautiful night. Una buonanotte.
Buonanotte, everybody. And look forward to the dance party soon.
Yes, dance party soon, damn it. We all need to shake our butts more. Anyway, bye. Thank you, Marjorie.
You're welcome.